What's up? What's up? What's up? This is your girl Yuta K Best, and you are listening to Hella Random Radio, where positive energy lives. We are here again, of course, with Mr. Michael Knight, who is co-hosting a lot of these new shows with me. And our guest today is Mr. Born Eye Ofosu Jones-Quartey. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Wonderful to be here
Yes.
with y'all.
Awesome. Care to do maybe a short introduction of yourself for the listeners?
Sure. Yeah, as you mentioned, my artist name is Born I. My given name is Osofu Jones-Quartey. I am a hip hop artist and meditation teacher based here in the Washington, D.C. area, which is the unceded land of the Piscataway people, and the home of the unmarked graves of many of my ancestors. And yeah, I make hip hop music and I teach meditation and I'm, a father and a husband, and I really try to incorporate all of my identities into one offering. I always forget to say that I'm an author also, because that feels very surreal to me, but I am the author of two books now and a third one
Wow.
in development. So,
Fantastic.
um, thank you. So yeah, author as well, and other hats also. Yeah.
Wow. So I didn't know about the author part. What are the two books that you have out?
Sure. Hold on. Let me grab one of them to show you. Hold up.
Okay,
It's
cool.
not. I didn't go. I'm not going far. Boom. All right. So this is my book, Love Your Amazing Self.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
It's in November. It would have been out for a year. This
Okay.
is a self-compassion and mindfulness book for young people. It's really an everybody book that is masked as a children's book.
Children's book.
Yeah. And I also have my first, so this was published by Story Publishing.
Okay.
Shout out to Story Publishing, all the great people there. And my first book was self-published. I just put it out myself through Amazon, and it's called You Are Enough,
Mm.
which is uh, kind of like my statement to the world in so many different ways. It's also a children's book, but meant to be an everybody book. Yeah. And
Okay.
y'all are the
Um,
first to know about my upcoming book, which will be an exploration of spirituality and hip hop.
okay, dope.
Fantastic.
I'm certainly looking forward. Do you have a title for that? Or a working
Um,
title even?
I'm gonna keep that under wraps. I
That's
do,
fair.
but I'm gonna until the paperwork is dry.
I hear that. I hear
Yeah,
that.
but we got the confirmation last week, so yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. And the shirt, I love the shirt you're wearing that also
Thank
says you are
you.
enough. Is that related to the book in any way or?
You Are Enough is the it's kind of like an umbrella brand for many things that I offer. It's the name of my record label and the name of my clothing company,
Hmm.
and just the name of my overall production outfit. This is a brand new t-shirt that we are going to
Wow.
be dropping um in a couple weeks. Yeah, it's in collaboration with another designer called Brigade.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, we just put our heads together to create this piece. So yeah, this is another You Are Enough offering.
Hmm.
Awesome, Dawson. So I'm pretty sure it's been longer. It's been a while since I've been following you on Instagram, and that's how we connected. And I think what really drew me to you is that you actually followed me back at some point. Um, and when I looked, I'm sure it was some music that you had posted that really drew me in at first, and the fact that you are very spiritually centered.
Mhm.
Um, but when I looked and I saw that not only are you doing music, but you're offering meditation, and now I know that you have that you're kind of seated in Buddhism. Do you
Yeah.
actually consider yourself? Would you say I am a Buddhist person?
Yeah. I was hesitant to sort of make that claim for a while for numerous reasons, because I don't really feel like I want to leave any spiritual path out, or to say that by claiming, I kind of felt that maybe by claiming this path, I'm saying that I think that this is better than others, so I'd rather just keep it open and say I'm spiritual. But the truth is that my spirituality is deeply informed by Buddhism, so much so that I'm comfortable saying that I'm a Buddhist practitioner. Yeah. And and then also comfortable saying that my practice is informed by several other spiritual traditions, including the African traditions that my parents come from, and other traditions around the world: Christianity, Judaism, Islam, um, Hinduism, Rasta, all of them. But I'm very comfortable saying that I'm a Buddhist. Yeah.
Okay, nice. And I attended a guided meditation that you did the other day, and a listening party for Amida,
Yeah.
which is the new album that's coming out on Friday. No, Saturday the 9th.
Saturday the 9th. Yes.
Right, right. And I made a note that you had stated that Buddhism is compatible with everything that is well intentioned.
Mm, mm.
And I
I told.
really, I really appreciated that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then there's also a song called
Koan.
Koan,
Yeah.
and it means riddle. And I
Yeah.
wrote that, you know, maybe you can talk a little bit more about what a koan is. I wrote that it pushes the mind beyond concepts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you had written, and there was a lyric in there that I wrote down that says, used to think I had to push the demons out. Now I just give them love when I see them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that song and about that lyric?
Sure, sure. So Koan is the first song that I wrote that really set this project in motion. When I released my last album, In This Moment, in 2021, I really didn't know if I had another project in me. I was pretty fulfilled artistically. I felt like I released this project now. If my kids ever, if I passed away suddenly and my kids wanted to know what I was about, there would be this project. And if other people wanted to know what I was about, there would be this project. And I felt really good about it artistically. And then some time passed, and I had some more experiences, and that were much more internal. And I was teaching a retreat at a place called Seven Oaks Retreat Center in the Shenandoah Mountains in Virginia. And there's a river deep into the forest. And I went and sat down by that river. And a friend of mine, the guy who produced 99% of this project, his name is Daniel Andres Rodriguez Corretor, and that he goes by Dark Music, but DARC is the acronym that spells his name. Anyway, he sent me this beat, and I'm sitting down by the water, and I just started writing. So my friend Ernest, rest in peace to my friend Ernest, had just been tragically murdered I think a few weeks or so prior to this. And I was at the edge of this water, and I was watching the leaves fall into the water, and just kind of looking at like the life cycle of nature happening right in front of my eyes. You could just see that new life was coming into being, old life was dropping away, and life was happening at all stages. And in the Zen tradition that I is one of the traditions that I study in the Plum Village Zen tradition, there's a teaching on no birth and no death, that
Mm.
what we are essentially is a continuation, and that birth and death are cycles of change that we go through, but not absolutes. And to me, I can kind of understand that in an intellectual way, but I was also seeing it in in a way that was beyond my concepts. I was just looking at the river, looking at the trees, looking at nature, and just like it presented itself to me kind of as this big riddle, like a koan.
Mm,
A koan is used in Zen Buddhism, a riddle that a teacher will give a student to go and practice with. And it's really meant to stop the mind from grasping at concepts and to go beyond what concepts are. So I kind of felt like that in that moment. Um, and I started writing. And the first verse was really about my understanding of this idea of continuation in a conceptual way, but it also still hurts to lose somebody that you love, and it also hurts to, for me, to ponder my own death and to ponder, the passing away of the people that I love. So in the opening line, I said, dependent origination. I try to see with investigation, no matter how clear it is, I still have fear of it. I can't explain all my hesitation.
mm,
Um, just talking about my relationship with this sort of understanding. And when we got to the second verse, it was talking about just where I am in my own spiritual practice. Um, and going to the line that you referenced, used to think I had to cast all my demons out. Now I just give them love when they see me around. Um, yeah, it's just been a journey for me to come to a place of self love and self compassion, to love even the places in me that I would rather not experience or that I have a hard time forgiving myself for, or where I'm still stuck in some ways. And then demons also can show up in the form of trauma and negative self-talk and um, self-criticism, fear, anxiety, all those different types of emotions and mental states. And instead of thinking that I have to cast them all out of my mind or live a life that doesn't encounter these types of things, what if what these so-called demons are asking me to do is just to learn how to respond with love, in every circumstance, in the most challenging
Ashe.
circumstances. How can love be the answer um in this moment? Yeah. So it's that verse is just me doing my best to express whatever insight I've gathered as a result of my practice up to this point. Yeah.
Mm. Dope, dope, dope. Thank you for sharing that. One thing that was coming up for me as you were talking about that last bit is um, you thought that your last album, might have been the last album.
Yeah.
You have Amita coming out this Saturday. And I heard you at the session saying that you're planning to start recording another.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you think that music is becoming a larger part of what you want to offer to the world, or
So I have been offering a lot of music for a while,
okay,
and I was kind of a little burnt out, I think. And
okay,
and I wasn't always making the type of music that I really wanted to make. That was one of the gifts of the pandemic for me. I had Today is the birthday of my one of my best friends and my former manager. Well, he's still my manager in disguise, my brother Tom Dern. Um, he passed away 5 years ago. But during our time together on Earth while we were working, we did a lot of work in electronic music,
okay,
and I had been making hip hop, and I was on a label and things were going well, and then all of a sudden everything crashed and burned. But a record that I had put out had gotten traction in the electronic music world, and so Tom reached out to me, and we just dove sort of all the way into creating a lot of collaborations where I was the vocalist and, working with other DJs and producers, making a ton of EDM. And it was great. I traveled all over the place, performed in front of thousands of people, just unbelievable experiences and making really great music. But and then I was also making my own electronic music records in collaboration with other DJs and trying to um, sort of put the role of the vocalist on equal footing as the DJ in electronic music, which is an uphill battle. So I had just been doing this for the longest time. My brother died in the process, just in a tragic accident, and I was just really burnt out with creating music. And so even myself, when I made In This Moment, I was thinking of my own mortality. Like, well, what if I just happened to suddenly pass away? Let me just create this project that can be like a testament to what's on my heart and where I am in this moment. Um, and then I was really relieved after that, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm done." I kind of feel very done. Um, and my wife was like, "You're definitely not done," but felt I felt very finished at that moment, and but gradually, and I couldn't, I didn't have the foresight to see like I'm going to experience new things and want to express them. So there are two more projects that I know for sure are going to happen. For sure is in air quotes because life is uncertain. But I have a children's an album, a companion album to this book, to
Nice.
Love Your Amazing Self, that will be coming out late late autumn, early winter.
Okay.
I'll be debuting that at the Grammy Museum in Los Angeles, and we're just figuring out what the exact date will be. And whatever date that is, that's the date that I'll drop the album for that. This
Oh,
will
so
be
it's
like
already ready.
it's ready. Yeah, yeah. So this is um it's a two-part project. One half um is is a hip hop project. So this book is written in verses. So you can read it
Okay,
as
dope.
poetry or you can recite them as verses. And so there's a hip hop version where it's more upbeat, and then there's a sound bath version where there's singing bowls and harp where it's more relaxed. So me having young kids and older kids, I'm thinking of like, what could I play for them while they're having breakfast in the morning? Just the upbeat, positive hip hop records. And then what could I play for them when it's time to cool down and go to bed, or if we're on a long drive and they need to relax or something like that? Then we have like the chill side too. So Love Your Amazing Self, the album, the double album, that's coming in winter. And then I just have a vision to do another like really massive hip hop project. And I don't know exactly what that looks like yet. I know where I want to record it and I know the people that I want to work with. Um, and I feel the vibration of the project alive in me.
I
I'm really,
felt it too as soon as you said it. That's amazing. I'm excited
yeah.
already.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I know that you like to keep things under wraps. So certainly, if it's none of my business, it's none of my business. But you said you know where you want to record it.
Hmm.
Can you share that and why?
Yeah. I attended a retreat at the Boulder Mountain Guest Ranch in Boulder, Utah,
Okay.
and I had never ever been out there before. It was definitely a brand new experience for me, but that land is quite magical. At night, you can see the Milky Way,
Wow.
um, the vastness of the rocky desert, the way just there's just something very the energy of the indigenous people who walk that land is that their spirits are still there. There's just a magic about that place. And at the Boulder Mountain Guest Ranch there is a studio, and so my dream is to rent that rent the ranch out, bring some my producer friends, bring my family, and just spend a week or two, like write it while we're out here, write like this the outline of it while we're here, and while we're in our respective places, and then gather there at the Boulder Mountain Guest Ranch and complete it there. So and maybe shoot all the videos there too. So it's just like this immersive experience. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds really amazing. If you need a side journalist,
For sure, for sure.
I am
Come, come,
definitely in.
come document
Um,
the experience. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And so there's two really different, but I'm sure very intertwined angles that I want to focus on. Like I want to talk about like hip hop and where that began for you, and then the whole like Buddhist meditation piece. And I guess I'll
Sure.
go ahead and start with the hip hop, like, and
Yeah.
especially we're all celebrating the 50th
Yeah.
anniversary of hip hop. So I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit and ask you because it took me a long time to figure it out. Do you know when you fell in love with hip hop?
Oh, it was different successions of falling in love, and hip hop has many faces,
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
so I in different phases of my life I fell in love with hip hop in different ways. This is a beautiful question. I've never thought about it like this before, but it's easy for me to answer because when I was a kid, um, I loved hip hop. When I was a kid, to me, hip hop was MC Hammer.
Okay.
So hip hop was and hip hop was what was on the radio for the longest time. So my to understand my relationship with hip hop is to kind of understand my parents' story as immigrants. My family's from Ghana in West Africa. I'm a first generation American. I was born here. Um, but and so there is a and backtracking, my father is and both of my parents, my father is not a musician, but he is such a deep lover of music that it was almost like growing up with a musician. He's kind of like a music historian, um, and he instilled in me the importance of loving music. um, that being said, hip hop was this movement that was happening sort of under the radar of my parents' generation, especially with them being immigrants also. So a bit of like the nuance of like kind of the more underground things that were happening in hip hop, I didn't really know about when I was a kid.
Mm,
I just knew what was on the radio. So
right.
when I was a kid, I was into MC Hammer. I am not ashamed to say that I was into Vanilla Ice also. Everybody was into
Hey,
Vanilla
me
Ice
too.
for a
Everybody
second.
had it. It didn't go
Every
platinum by itself.
Everybody listened to Ice Ice Baby if you're of a certain age. It didn't go platinum by itself. Exactly. Okay.
No, it did
So
not.
it did not go platinum in a vacuum. So, I just love the happy-go-lucky hip hop. I love Tone Loc, Funky Cole Medina. I loved, Rob Bass and Easy Rock. I loved just all the stuff that was a part of hip hop culture in the early '90s, the late '80s and the early '90s. And then as I started coming of age a little bit more, you know, as a 10, 11, 12-year old, then it became all about West Coast hip hop. It became the G-Funk era, Dr.
Mm,
Dre, Snoop Dogg, Warren G, pretty much anything coming out of the West Coast. That West Coast, that incredible West Coast movement that started with NWA, but like really hit maximum peak with the Chronic and with Doggy Style. So that was a whole nother type of falling in love with hip hop. It wasn't about that was falling in love with the street side of hip hop and the fantastical gangster tales of these people in a faraway land. I've always been here on the East Coast, so and it was so subversive, and you had to listen to it at like notch two of volume, so that your parents didn't hear you listening to the new Doggy Style, and God forbid they saw the album cover or anything like that. So it was like having contraband. It was so subversive and so, you know, it gave it was thrilling
yeah.
that type of music, and that was another point in which I fell in love with hip hop. But I think when I knew that hip hop was going to become a part of my life happened when I went to high school. And I always credit my friend, his name is John Lujan. We were carpooling and we picked John up, and he had these huge bangs and he would never say a word. He'd just get in the back seat and just kind of slump over, and these big bangs would just fall over his face, and he just didn't say anything. So for the first like month of school, he would just get in the car, sit down, and I'd be playing, all the West Coast jams that were on the radio, like Coolio, Fantastic Voyage, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was loving all that stuff. And then one day he gets out of the car and was like, uh, yo man, if we're gonna ride to school together every morning, you're gonna have to start listening to some better music. And he hands me a mixtape that he made for me that had everything that I was completely clueless about that was happening in the East Coast underground, um, New York City movement of hip hop. On this mixtape, he had Wu-Tang Clan, Black
Whoa.
Moon, Mobb Deep, um, Showbiz and AG, uh, I mean, just J. Rue the Damager, Smith and Wesson, Boot Camp Click. He just like gave me this download. And when I listened to that tape, like it wasn't just people rapping about, I don't
Yeah,
know, just
popular stuff. It was
yeah.
Yeah.
No, this was music where people were talking about like what their inner and outer reality was, um, what it meant to feel, what it was to survive, the world in that time. And my love of words and poetry and stuff like that, comes from my dad. And it was so much more lyrically dense. It was so much more to think about and to ponder and to try to, and so much more fun to memorize. And, I went to this military school and I thought I was wanted to join the military, but then I heard this one mixtape and I was like, "Psh, my whole life is completely changed. Like this is the direction I want to go in." Um, and yeah, I became what's known as a hip hop head. And um, so I think I've loved hip hop since the moment I heard it, and I've had different love relationships with it. But the moment I felt that we would be inseparable for the rest of our lives was in high school, probably 1994. Yeah, not to mention Nas was on this tape too, and If I Rule the World had come out as a single. So I missed Illmatic altogether, and I had missed Enter the 36 Chambers altogether. I had missed a few things, so I had to back date myself and catch up. And even that process was so invigorating. And I lost myself in it. And Wu-Tang Clan really became a big part of my focus of like, who I was really interested in listening to. Um, and yeah, so that's a long answer to your short question.
No, I mean, I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm a hip hop head too. And so I'm here for it. I'm totally here for it. And I do got to run to the restroom again. My apologies, but I know exactly what the next question is. So I'll be right back.
All right, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's fantastic to hear your story about how hip hop has affected you. My days go back further back than that. So it's just hearing someone else talk about it from the way they picking it up in the 90s. It's really
Yeah.
interesting and how it did, because I was around when MC Hammer was out, and there was such a dichotomy on people. He was such a polarizing artist, unnecessarily so, right? And then when
Really?
it's like what Hammer presented and how he performed was not who he was. He is such he was gangster in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Yeah, he was very gangster, and that's not when let's get it started and all that stuff, and all those people that were on stage, and all that money he spent on all those people.
All those people.
Yeah, and there was during that time there was all this question. The traditional hip hop people on the East Coast were really just kind of going in on Hammer and saying, "Hey, this is not rap. This is not." At that time they called it rap,
Yeah.
and being able to for him to affect young people in a way that in my stage, I was kind of on the other side. I was still on the East Coast listening to Wu-Tang and all those guys over there, and I'd picked up the West Coast stuff too. But
Yeah.
here in NWA, I was actually in the Marine Corps at that particular time. And listen, and you talk about having some confiscated information. Being on a Marine Corps base in Okinawa, Japan, and listening to NWA for the first time, and we the way we had it was a very generic area where we had it was a pool table and all this other stuff, and so everybody got to play, had tapes that they could come in and play any of their music. The first time a guy came in and played NWA in front of everybody while we were playing pool,
Wow.
boy, I was in shock. I was in shock. One, that somebody was saying all this, and
Right.
two, I'm not the only black guy sitting in there. There's a bunch of everybody is in there, and we're having this conversation about all this cursing. I think the good thing was that I was in the Marine Corps and everybody was used to cursing all the time. So that wasn't offensive. It really
Right.
was just the lifestyle that they were talking about that particular time and the way they painted that picture. Ice
Yeah.
Cube and them came in and just kind of changed the game in a way that no one really had said. Challenging authority. On the
Yeah.
East Coast, there was always stories that talked about people's lives in the inner city, and that aspect has always been a part of hip hop.
Right.
But to challenge authority and verbally say it out loud and be unabashedly like this is how it is, and if you don't
Yep.
like it, tough,
Yep.
was odd, and for sure.
Yeah. So super, very, 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 very powerful. And yeah, I mean, I remember here on the East Coast, man, everybody started wearing Oakland Raiders hats, and that's when NWA came out.
Yeah, right.
It was very influential, and the the rebellion against authority and the questioning of it, and the yeah, all of that. It struck a chord for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, go
Darn,
ahead.
I hate to
Get
come
your
in on the tail end. I suspect I'm going to end up keeping most of whatever y'all were talking about while I was away. But yeah, I mean, and it's probably in alignment with these next couple of questions. So it sounds like 94, your homie gives you this mixtape, which
Yeah.
changes and expands your entire view of the music. And suddenly you know that you want to contribute to it as well. So how long after that would you say like you actually created something that you wanted to share with the world?
Yeah. So I think I was convinced that hip hop was going to be a part of my life at that point, but not convinced that I personally wanted to say
Okay.
that I personally wanted to join in the conversation. These people were elevated to the level of gods to me, and,
I
and
heard
so
that.
I was just like, I'm just here to listen and to learn and to let my life be informed by what I'm experiencing. It was in 97 when the Wu-Tang Forever double CD came out that I was so moved by it, and a lot of my friends and contemporaries were really moved by it as well. And there were the more obscure underground artists in the Wu-Tang movement, like Sons of Man, Killer Priest, Killer Army, um, and they were presenting like a deeply spiritual philosophy that seemed to like underpin what Wu-Tang was offering, the spirituality that was in Nas's music, and that was very interesting to me. And I I think I was coming into a desire to understand my spirituality more and to go even deeper into what I was experiencing with hip hop. So it was around 97 when I know I wrote my very first rap when I was 10 years old at like some amusement park. When you're in the booth and they have those like little booths and you can record some music in there and take it home with you. But I can say that that's like the very first rap that I wrote. But um, the 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 first time I really was serious about it was in 97, and
How old were
um,
you? About?
17,
Okay.
17, yeah.
Okay.
And so um I started writing. I remember I just got this like little pink, this little red memo pad, and just started writing. I can't even remember, but yeah. And then you know, back then, go to the mall, go to cookhouse, and a lot of people were battling each other. You know, so the rap culture in this area was very very strong, and there's a lot of kids battling. And so, you know, I go to the mall, I'd meet other MCs, and we would strike up a friendship. You know, somebody knows somebody here, there. We go somewhere, we all battle, we all become friends. And slowly but surely, I formed a group here, and um, and so it was like the summer of '97 was when I really got serious about it.
Okay.
And then I went to American University that fall, and just as fate would have it, my roommate, a guy named Chris Turner, um, was was attending AU to be an audio technology major.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Gosh.
so he built a studio in our dorm room, and that became like the first hub for not only me but a bunch of different artists from the area here, recording our first demos, our first projects. You know, bringing my friends from off campus to my dorm room, which was the studio, and making a whole bunch of music. And yeah, that's where it really started. Yep.
And how would you describe your spiritual foundation at that time,
I
at the
would
very
just
beginning of hip hop for you?
I would describe it as searching,
Okay.
um, because I was fortunate enough for my parents, well, two things. The one sort of outright religious practice that I was introduced to by my parents was Buddhism, actually. It was
Okay. Wow.
yeah.
Nice.
All
So
right.
my mom was a Buddhist she still considers herself a Buddhist, but kind of in a more expanded sense. But she was a Buddhist practitioner in the Nichiren tradition when I was a kid, and I'm an only child, and so my mom and I are very close, and she would take me with her to the different temples that she would go to, and I'd experience the chanting and the incense and the monks and all that stuff. And to me, it was very fascinating. It it reminded me of the stuff that I was seeing on Black Belt Theater and
Mm.
the Ninja Turtles and all that stuff. So it felt like, hey, I'm connected to, I'm here hanging out with my mom, but I feel like I'm going to like the dojo or something like that. It felt cool. And but it wasn't something that she pushed on me. She would just take me as, we just hung out together a lot.
Yeah.
And um I had attended like a Christian school for a year. I went to this Christian summer camp, and I sort of got introduced to Christianity through these external um, organizations, and that also struck a deep chord with me too. Um, and then but I didn't have like an upbringing like many people have, where it's like your parents tell you what your religion is and you go practice it. You practice it with them, as your way of life. It wasn't quite like that for me. So I was always thinking about, what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to die? Who is God? Where is God? All those questions. I was thinking about those things a lot as a kid, and I was free to kind of search and find my answers. A lot of the hip hop artists at that time were calling themselves God, were saying that each of us have our own divinity within us, that the black man is God, or that God is all things, or that everything is everything, or and so I was. And then some of the even the more underground artists had a um a black nationalist take on Christianity and Judaism, like the Hebrew Israelites, and those types of movements as well. There was in a lot of the rappers that were coming out of Brooklyn, you could hear references to Rastafarianism in there. So I was getting this deep spiritual subtext from all the rappers I was listening to, and they became spiritual teachers to me as well. And it was through hip hop that I went really deep on a multifaceted spiritual journey for sure. I started reading the Bible on my own, encouraging my parents to do the same thing. Um, yeah, I was reading the Quran, I was just studying everything. So at this time, I would say that maybe searching isn't necessarily the right word. I was absorbing. Yeah,
Absorbing, fair,
yeah,
fair. And were you projecting any of that into your music at that time? Or what were
definitely.
you talking about when
I
you
was
were?
so there's this song by a group that didn't have a whole lot of hits, but they had this group called the Boogie Monsters. They had a song called Living oh, I can't even remember what the name of the song was, but the hook was living in these last days and times, check yourself and what you feed your mind. I know you can't be blind living in the future. So this is like we're getting into like the late 90s, and there's this general theme of like apocalypticism that's happening in
Mm,
hip hop. Busta Rhymes on The Coming. The whole series of Busta Rhymes album was all about like the impending apocalypse, He would say in 95, he would say there's only 5 years left. In every album he'd cut
Yep.
it
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
And that's what you God on Triumph, we can't fear because the last days and times are surely here. This was just a theme, across all the rappers I was listening to, that there is an impending apocalypse about to happen. So my group was very much along that line. We were called the Last Day Apostles, and then
wow.
when we formed with this other group, we were the Armageddon Dynasty, like just like all about like a spiritual revolution. Bless you.
Thank
A
you.
spiritual revolution, the end of one world and the beginning of a new world. So that's what we were really rapping about, just these deep kind of like um um Judeo-Christian Islamic apocalyptic themes. Yeah, it's pretty crazy when I think about it in retrospect. But it was, I think, if you think about it, an apocalypse was happening to each of us as young men. The destruction of our childhood, and the stepping into a, a new life as an adult, and that I think we were giving voice to that angst, and we were seeing society transform. The internet had just arrived. I mean, things were changing very drastically. And then like a semi-apocalyptic event happened with 9/11. And so there was just that sort of theme that was running through the music we were creating at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. And
Y2K
did
was
you
a thing
actually?
too.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
No, no, I was just saying that was around the time Y2K was so like 2000 and machines were going crazy. There was a lot of end of like the world was coming to an end aspects during that time. There was a lot of that, especially in music, and it was
Definitely.
reflective. I definitely remember that.
Yeah.
We all made it afterwards, thank goodness. But all the way up to it, boy, we were all very nervous, and there's a lot of change going on in the world, especially in music.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I assume that from that point in 97, especially once y'all had the lab, in your home, that you were making music pretty consistently until you had kind of the electronic burnout. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's my career as an artist, as a rapper, has had so many different incarnations. Since I started doing hip hop, almost immediately, I was also doing electronic music as another offering. So when I got to American University, I was exposed to rave culture and underground electronic music culture, drum and bass, big warehouse parties. And I had this, and I still have this idea that the art of rapping is infinitely adaptable. That if we can rap over classical music, we can rap over an opera, we can rap over harp, we can rap over singing bowls, we can rap over. So I was like, let's rap over this, you know, and there was already the tradition of having MCs in drum and bass, etc. But I was trying to do it from more of a East Coast American hip hop sensibility. So I started rapping at these huge underground warehouse parties and raves, doing that. And then also, I used to host an open mic in DC and hosting like just the most underground open mic situation. So I was deep in the underground on the electronic scene and in the hip hop scene in DC during that time. And I was making a lot of music with my group and then solo. Then I was in a group for a while, just a duo with a brother of mine named Agua. We were in a group called Shambhala. And that
How funny.
towards the end of my time in college, I really came back to Buddhism as and meditation as a life path. You know, a few different factors. One of which, my oldest daughter Sundara, coming into the world right before I graduated college. There was something about her arrival that kind of sent me back to the times with my own mother, and um, brought up the idea of Buddhist practice, you know, being important to share with a child. And then my then girlfriend, now wife, her mom is also a meditation teacher, a spiritual teacher. And so I was going on retreats, you know, with her, and just kind of just really getting a dose of what it meant to practice meditation, to go inside, to connect with the innermost parts of yourself. And so by the time I'm graduating college, I'm just really firmly on this meditation path, and exploring how to incorporate that into my music. I linked up with a brother named Agua who was on the same path, a similar path, and we formed this group, very, very powerful group, Shambhala, and we had a lot of success as an underground hip hop group here in the city and internationally. We released an album called The Lotus of, and then spent many years working on many, many, many other projects that never saw the light of day, as it happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and the time came where it was time for us to go our separate ways, and I started making music. I kind of got tired of, like, I had been in the apocalyptic trenches of hip hop. I had been in the Eastern sensibilities trenches of hip hop in Shambhala, and I had gotten kind of burnt out from doing that. And
Mm.
I wanted to see
You mean
what
you
other.
got burnt out from the topic, or what do you mean?
I think leaving Shambhala, which was such a successful venture, but there was so much turmoil in the group. I just wanted to kind of walk away from everything that being like an underground hip hop artist represented and came with. Really, it was like this was a traumatic breakup, and everything that feels like this is triggering for me. So
Mm.
I'm gonna go another direction. You know, it's and in hindsight, I can see that that's what was happening. I had just zero appetite to do anything like that anymore. But it really was that I just I can't be around anything that looks or feels like this right now, because we just spent 8 years that were glorious and very difficult, and I just can't do it.
I hear that. Yeah, it
So
sounds really funny to hear somebody say, you know, I left Shambhala.
And seriously, of all things, and yeah,
You know,
seriously.
because, you know, and for people out there listening who don't know, and this is definitely one of those hella random asides that we're about to take, but it's kismet. It's meant to be, because Michael and I, Michael for the first time, I think, and I'm revisiting The Secret of Shambhala
Yeah.
by James
wow.
Redfield. And so for you to bring it up, like, I gotta talk about it. Can you
Seriously.
It's a
Obviously,
great book.
well, right, and Shambhala, it probably means something different to everybody who has any kind of a relationship with it. But can you talk a little bit about what Shambhala is, assuming someone is listening and may not have ever heard of it?
Yeah. There are many ways to describe what Shambhala is. Um, in one sense, you can say that Shambhala is an enlightened society. Um, it is the sort of a heaven on earth, a spiritual utopia where where human beings have realized their true nature and live in harmony with one another and live in harmony with nature. Advancements in um, both inner and outer technology are at their peak. And it is the most ideal expression of what it means to be alive. And not just for oneself, but for the whole community, for the whole
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
And so Shambhala is a vision for there are those who believe that it's a physical place that exists. Many believe that it was physically located in in Tibet. If people have heard the word Shangri-La,
Mhm.
that might evoke some imagery in their minds. And Shangri-La is another way of saying Shambhala. Um, and
Utopia.
Yeah, yeah. But it's also a state, for me, I think it's also a state of mind and
Absolutely.
a way of showing up in the world, just it's being kind to your Uber driver and to the person at the grocery store. And it's not being it's being kind when you're in traffic. It's coming back to your center when you've been triggered. Um yeah, it's all the ways that you make a conscious choice to not cause harm, even if a harmful response is available to you. So yeah, yeah. But again, another long answer to a short question.
No, yeah, no, I definitely appreciate it. Anyway, so you kind of got burnt out, or essentially you had a painful breakup, and
Yeah.
everything that made you think of that time became triggering. So you didn't want to look at it. So how did your music shift, or how did your life shift after that?
Yeah, so this begins a chapter. So during this whole time, my artist name had been Born Infinite,
Okay.
um, connected to the teachings of the 5% Nation and inspired by, I'm not a 5%er, but my name was, but I took so much influence from that school of thought, and my name was influenced by it as well. And so yeah, this was my big question, like what would it be like to step into the world that I had eschewed for so long, the mainstream music world, the mainstream world, period. Because
Mm,
I was as underground as it can get, all green fatigues, wallaby shoes, just like, my big African Fulani hat. I was just very underground. I didn't dress like mainstream people. I didn't go where mainstream people went. I didn't even know what that was.
yes, I've
Oh,
been
I
there.
didn't know, the club. I was also a new parent at the same time, so I wasn't going out to party. I was a very young dad, and so when I went out, it was on a mission. We were going to go to the studio. We were gonna or go to a show. Perform. So this time when I left Shambhala, I changed my name from Born Infinite to Born Eye Music. And it's just sort of, this period is like me stumbling through what does it mean to be um yeah, what does it mean to be a part of mainstream culture. This is me dressing very differently than I was. And when you look back at it and when you listen to some of that old stuff, it's really me pantomiming what I thought was, this is what the cool people do, or the, and just what they wear. I was just taking a stab at anything.
So
So
do you
that
feel like you were kind of wearing a mask for a while there, or trying
I
to
think
fit in?
I think that I was wanting to give, um, because so full disclosure, and I think it's important for me to do these because we talk a lot about spirituality, but there was definitely just like a young male side of me that was, uh, that was in, involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. So um, yeah, how much do I want to divulge here? But yeah, I mean, as much as I was
I'm
putting
open.
as
Yeah,
much as I was
seriously.
put
Yeah.
as much as I was putting forward, as much as I was devoted to my spirituality, I still was, I still sold drugs, at
Mm.
one point in time in my life. As much as I was devoted to spirituality, I was still like a promiscuous young man. I like to go to the strip club. I smoked a ton of weed, we did a bunch of drugs. So like spirituality was an underpinning, but I definitely was still doing all kind, doing what all the
Absorbing.
mainstream people, were doing too,
Yeah.
And so I was making a little bit of an indictment of my hypocrisy during that time of just like
Mm.
you're wearing all these dashikis and beads and all this other stuff, but like nobody knows that like when you're done with the studio you go to the strip club, or nobody knows that like you guys have moved to a studio that's like essentially like a trap house, like, and so why not embrace that part of you as well, why, or
Ashe.
yeah, why
Absolutely.
not just be, or at least like let it not be so atrophied within you, like, and so like this hidden thing, we I remember when we'd be in our dashikis and in our like Asian spiritual garb, and we'd have our prayer beads on, and right before we go to the strip club we take the prayer beads off and we sit them in the car and was like, what are we doing, like, so, I mean, I get the respect aspect of it, but there was just, and this thread of I mean, hypocrisy is a strong word, but I'm okay using it because I think we all have these like opposing um vibrations in us that, the real spiritual work is reconciling them. But this was me going to the other extreme, of indulgence, and still keeping. I had my teacher, a Buddhist monk named Bhante Buddharakita, black man from Uganda. When I was talking to him about making this transition, he said, the Dharma, or the teachings of the Buddha, are called gems, and a gem is something that's very small, but that is worth a lot. So even if you're making music that's more secular and more worldly, even if you just have a little gem of the truth in there from time to time, that'll be worth a lot. So I kind of felt like with his blessing, I was gonna start exploring what it was like to rap about like a faster paced life, nightlife and cars and women and just the mainstream stuff, but also stuff that I was attracted to, and didn't want to
And
pretend like
did.
I didn't want to
Absolutely.
pretend like I wasn't attracted to.
Right.
So um so my manager at the time, Nate Montpettit, he was a major promoter in Washington D.C. nightlife, and he plugged me. Once I started making music, that really, he had been a friend of mine since the Shambhala days, but he saw the transition I wanted to make, and once I started making music that really was on par with what what people in the clubs and stuff like that were listening to, he kind of plugged me right in. And I started making friends with promoters, and I just became a part of a whole new scene, the club scene, the DC nightlife scene. And um, that, that was quite the journey and quite the pivot from where I had been. If you knew me at that time, you'd been like, oh, he's sold out. Like he gave it all up.
Mm.
He gave it all up and he sold out. It's like going from the fatigues to the shiny suit era in hip hop. Like that, I did that personally.
Did you
Um,
yourself ever feel like you sold out?
Probably, but once I tried cocaine, I didn't care. That's like
I heard that.
I love it. Yeah. That's so funny. A quick
once,
question
yeah, yeah,
though.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
please,
it's interesting that like you feel like there's a dichotomy in all of us. As a black man, I can relate to this. Is there this there's this the spiritual side of us that speaks to our heart. But then there's the other parts of our bodies that speak loudly in our lives all of the time, right?
yeah,
And it's hard not to listen to that. And it's hard with everything that goes on and what gets promoted to feel like these are opposing aspects of us.
yeah,
And it's interesting to hear you talk about that. And maybe if I had a question, how do you feel like you've integrated both sides of you? Because both of those, to me, both of those are you. Both of those are
yeah,
your truths. And that doesn't mean just because two truths don't necessarily seem like they fit in the same circular and should be together. In my mind, they are together because they are
yeah.
together in you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you bring up is really the foundation of the journey that I continue to be on is this journey of reconciling heaven and earth within myself, you know.
Ashe.
Mm.
Um what when I became Born Eye Music, there was a there was like a mission statement um in a freestyle that I did, and it was like I opened it up and I said, maybe you can really have your cake and eat it too. I wanted to see if this is possible. You know, is it possible? And so at the end of that freestyle, I say homage to the Dalai Lama and all the mobsters. You know, that it was I was gonna really just like give myself over to both of these energies and just like, can I just be both
Yeah.
and do both? What I ultimately came to find out was that without practicing, without doing like deep inner work, to you can be ambushed by latent traumas and
Mm.
um, and the post-traumatic stress of just being, for me, you know, Black in America, being an only child, a child of immigrants, all these different factors. If you are trying to do like a deep existential experiment of reconciling like the two natures of humanity within yourself without checking like, am I okay enough to even do this? You
Yeah.
know, am I
Yeah.
healthy enough? Am I of sound mind and body enough to go on a journey like this? Then you can actually end up causing yourself and others a lot of harm, which
Yeah.
is unfortunately um what happened in many ways on this experiment. You know, I um there were so many ways where I harmed myself just with my lifestyle, drugs and alcohol, not sleeping, um, you know, relationships that I, you know, should not have had, and all just all types of different ways in which um, I became like really out of step with what I knew my values were.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and then there's like the spiritual shame that accompanies that. Spirituality is still very strong in you, so then the shame that accompanies, you know, being incongruent with your values is also another kind of harm, the deep like self-shaming.
Yeah.
Um and um and doing all of this while like being still a young father, trying to hold my family together, trying to hold myself together, but really like also trying to make it as an artist and feeling like, of course, I'm going on this experiment personally, but I'm also like wanting to achieve the ideal of mainstream success now too. So, making compromises in my integrity of like the people I'm hanging out with and the places I'm going to and the just the ways that people are interacting with me, like financially, etc. Like, all of these different things, because I just didn't have solid footing anymore,
Yeah.
and or I just hadn't had solid footing yet. I was just, quite a young person with a lot going on and never once stopping to say, you have a lot going on. You know what I'm saying? You're 24 now with two children. You just graduated school. You immediately, began a family with your, fiance. You're just, this is a lot,
A
like,
lot. Yeah.
are you okay? Do you need to talk to somebody? You have like, traumas from high school, mental health stuff, long bouts of depression as a kid, and lots of anxiety as a new young adult. And all of this is not being addressed. It's and so now your music career is being a form of escape from the issues that are under the surface,
Yeah.
and you're self-medicating, and actually in a slow march to suicide,
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
and or slow or fast depending on how it goes. There I met my new manager. His name is Omar. um and this began like, I basically moved to Miami. This is the Lamborghini era, so things had grown. I had gotten to a like this mission of mine to become more mainstream,
Mhm.
was becoming accomplished. I got picked up by like, by new management, moved to Miami, started working out of the Hit Factory right above Young Money, Cash Money Studios. Lil
Mhm.
Wayne is skateboarding in the parking lot.
Wow.
I'm wearing $80,000 bracelets, and we're riding around Miami in a Lamborghini all the time. Like, and we're getting right to now. We're having meetings at Def Jam, Rock Nation. It's like, I quit my job. I'm no longer, I'm a full-time artist. This
Yeah.
is it's happening. So even though yes, there's still this, like, all of the turmoil inside is being masked by the success that's happening,
Yeah.
you know
Absolutely.
and then it just all fell apart. Like, one for 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 things to happen, just all these different bricks had to fall into place, for us to get the money to do what we had to do. And, somebody was stealing from, in our organization. There was a big shortfall that we couldn't recoup. And so what the big launch that we had been working for, that I had been recording so much music for, doing so much for, that it just never happened. It was very devastating crash.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And um and that again was a very traumatic experience that I did, that I wanted nothing to do with anymore. After that crash. It was like,
Yeah.
because it was around Christmas time, where it was supposed to be like huge windfall presents for everybody.
Gosh.
I'm about to start like my mainstream rap career, and it just didn't happen. And it was really, really devastating.
Yeah.
Our last ditch effort was a record called Supreme Mathematics, that we dropped on Revolt TV. We got a shout out from Diddy about it, and So to the rest of the world, I was still like operating at a peak. I just got a shout out from Diddy on Twitter, two of them, and I'm on national television.
Mm.
So, but that was it though. We had no more money, we had nothing. And so I had no more moves. But that record, Supreme Mathematics, contained an electronic music sample that got picked up by the EDM community and blew up over there too. And then
Hmm.
my new manager, Tom, reached out and was like, I love this record. I think I can blow you up in electronic music. What do you say? And then thus began my 5-6 year journey in EDM as well. I really left hip hop behind for almost 6 or 7, yeah, close to 7 years, because I had done so much in the underground and in the mainstream. Both ended in tragedy. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and do you really judge that it's tragedy at this point, or or do you know that that it's leading you to the wholeness where you are, that big name or whatever, however big you decide to be,
Yeah,
you know, from a completely authentic and mostly healthy place.
for sure. I mean, this is the best that I've ever felt as an artist, as a human being, and some days it's the worst I've ever felt, but that's only because I am in touch with how I feel. And I'm not
Yes.
and I'm not masking that or running away from it. And I'm able to be with it, and able to practice with it. I think the beautiful thing that was happening all through all of this is that I still maintained my meditation practice. Sometimes I would sit down and just feel my my hypocrisy and incongruency and just feel just shame and just but I still just kept at it. I the one thing I never completely let go of was my meditation practice. And when and in those, because the electronic journey had its arc as well. Um and all of these sort of, I guess going back to the philosophy of no birth and no death, all of these moments of continuation and change um, brought me to a place of really surrendering to what is most true within me. But I could not have even understood what those things were if I hadn't gone through all that I went through.
Right.
If I wasn't ambitious, or if I wasn't brave enough to say I'm going to try rapping, it really wouldn't. This I don't. Who knows how the journey would have unfolded,
Yeah.
but yeah, no. I mean, from where I sit now, I am. If I yeah, I mean, I couldn't ask to be in a better place artistically, um, emotionally, spiritually. This is the place that I back then had always wanted to be. Truly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to honor time. For me, this has been epic. We haven't really touched on any of the questions that I wanted to ask, but that's because this is like the real type of conversation that I hope to have. And I think that you have dropped some really huge gems, especially I don't always feel good, but it's because I'm choosing to feel my feelings, which I think is the only healthy way forward.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is to just feel all of our feelings instead of trying to distract ourselves or medicate them away. And so I love that we got there without any intention of going there.
yeah. We can
Um,
go. We can go. If we can go 10 minutes past, if y'all, if that's cool. I just got the nod that I've got a little bit more time. So
okay, awesome,
yeah.
awesome. So I would imagine, that we'll talk again, like after you have some of your other
Sure.
projects out and things of that nature. But I do want to shift and just kind of make this the last question, at least for me, and we'll see if Michael has anything else that he wants to ask. But I'm going to completely shift gears at this point because I think you must have an important view of this. And one of the original questions that I wrote is, do you believe that humanity is evolving at this time? Like,
Mm.
what would you say to that?
I would say absolutely humanity is evolving at this time because I am evolving at this time and I'm a part of humanity. So if
Ashe.
Shay, indeed, man. I love that. Love
thank you. It's just, I can only speak for I can only truly speak for myself, but I know that I'm a part of of humanity. So if this whole story that I've been able to share is a story of evolution.
Ashe.
I'm fortunate enough to have been surrounded with family, friends, ancestors, and so much love, and people who saw the light within me before I could really see it for myself. Um, and to just be alive long enough to be on to recognize that evolution is taking place and then to be an active participant in it. Um, and that's what I feel like I'm doing now is actively participating in my own evolution. Um, and I do see that theme is is possible and active in many of my fellow human family members. That we are that many of us are looking at ways to solve climate change, looking at ways to overcome mental illness, to overcome cancer, disease, to see deeper into the universe, um, to to create healthier minds and bodies and hearts. There are, I mean, depending on how you have your algorithm structure, you can see thousands of people are on the internet, sending out messages of positivity and growth. You are
Yes.
one of them. Um, so I would say yes, that I believe that we are evolving, and speaking for myself, I know that evolution is happening within me.
Ashe. Michael, do you have any other questions?
No, no, I don't. It's just a comment. It's double albums are always a treacherous thing to be able to do. And for you to be able to do that and write a book and have that all tied in together is talks to your power and your energy and your connection with everything that's around you. And being able to put all that together into something that can help other people is magnificent. I really am admire you, brother, for being able to integrate it and through your life weave through that dichotomy, which is all as man in general and as a black man extra. So I appreciate that.
As a black man extra. Yeah. Exclamation point on that. Thank you so much for saying so. I think I appreciate being able um to share in this way because and to be able to talk about the journey a little bit because it's not that I'm like this fully formed individual. That it's been an evolutionary process with considerable moments of darkness and considerable moments of light, and something that I say to myself when I experience a moment of mental or emotional difficulty. I say to myself that this is not the end. I can be with this. Um, and, to anybody that's listening, if you are going through a difficult time, just know that this is not the end. It's a part of a process of continuation, a process of evolution. And the more you can be with what you are experiencing, the more you will liberate it and it will liberate you.
Yes, 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 yes. You read my mind. I was definitely going to finish by asking what your last words were, and they could not have been more perfect, in my opinion. I thank you so much for sharing this time and space with us and our audience. This has been Hella Random Radio, where positive energy lives. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Born Eye. And I look forward to building with y'all in other ways in the future.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much. All
Thank
right,
you.
take care.
Peace.
Peace.
The next song is called Frozen Lake. I wrote this while I was teaching a retreat for teenagers in Massachusetts at the edge of a frozen lake. My daughter Samadhi
Letting go
is on
gives
the
us
chorus.
freedom. And freedom is the only condition for happiness. If in our hearts we still cling to anything, anger, anxiety, or possessions, we cannot be free.
Sitting at the edge of a frozen lake, I come to realize the universe makes no mistakes. Water bubbles suspended in time, edge of the water, looking at the edge of my mind, watching the motion picture that flickers behind my eyelids. I'm wondering why my vision makes everything look divided. Got memories of the sky as an eagle when I was flying, connected by the thread of the essence that lives inside us. I'm empty, but I'm full, I'm on fire, but I'm cool. Compassion made me a teacher, desire made me a fool. Self-hatred makes me question what my purpose is. I recognize, accept it, investigate, and I nurture it. When everything's connected, remember, then I forget it. I'ma die a living legend, remember that and respect it. Life is what you make it, it's never what you expected. Let go of the past and future, forever live in the present.
My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the four oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and my laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one.
So that's just a snippet of Frozen Lake. That was my daughter Samadhi on the chorus reading the poetry of Thich Nhat Hanh.